Dr. Sandy Good, thanks for sitting down with me today. It's been a pleasure, even in the last couple years, I'd say, to get to know you. I was a student of yours back in the early 2000s, many moons ago, but didn't know you that well back then. Had a few of your classes, but yeah, just wanted to have you in and chat about your life story, your ministry, and some of the adventures you've been on. But basically, just to yeah, get to know you a little better and promote what you've been doing and what you're planning on doing here in the near future. So, yeah, how about start with your upbringing and some of your backstory?
Well, first of all, thank you. Thank you so much. Bob, is it?
Yeah, that's right. You
Yeah,
got it.
Bob.
Nailed
Yeah.
it.
It seems like you went on a trip with me
That's true.
somewhere.
Yeah, it's true. Back in
Are we
2008.
allowed to say what country it was?
Sure. Yeah, there's
Oh,
nothing
wasn't
secret.
it Turkey?
It was.
It
Yeah,
was
it was
Turkey.
Turkey.
Yeah. I love Turkey's one of my favorite places.
Yeah.
Students often ask me, or people ask me, what's my favorite place I've been? I usually say Turkey. Didn't even plan on talking about this, but very relational, wonderful people. All seven churches in Revelation are in modern day Turkey, and yet 99.9% of Turks would say they're Muslim, and very, very few have heard the gospel. So I always cry a lot in Turkey,
Yeah.
partly because of the biblical history and sitting in the amphitheater in Athens, not Athens, that's in Greece, in the amphitheater in Ephesus, where Paul was, in Acts 17, and there was a riot there because people were turning from their idols to God, and now it sat there. We sat in there, read the book of Ephesians, and very, very few, if any, in the area even know Jesus. So thanks for going. Thanks for going to
Yeah,
Turkey with me.
that was quite an experience. Yeah, I was there with a few good buddies, and yeah, there were a lot of stories that we still
Yeah,
reminisce about. So that was a great a great trip. But yeah,
and I don't think you were the guy that was doing a handstand up on the wall of some ancient castle.
yeah,
Yeah,
definitely not.
the
Yeah, one of our mutual friends, Lem, who is a upstanding member of the PA National Guard now. So that's good. We can all
yes,
change. So
yeah, yes, we can. Well, yeah, thank you. I'm certainly glad to be here. Upbringing, I I'm a local new. Well, I guess this is local, Lancaster County. No, you're. I grew up in New Holland. Went to Guard Spot High School, class of 1967. Ray, rah rah. I always got all A's in math. Scored real high on all those math exams and stuff. And our soccer teams were really, really good. So played soccer. And so when I went to college, I went to Roberts Wesleyan College. I'd say solely, maybe, to play soccer and just assume I'll major in math and I'll come back to New Holland. I'll coach soccer some high school and be the math teacher. I flunked calculus 2 twice. I retook it the second year and flunked it the second time. Because of flunking it the second time, my girlfriend, her name was Diane, it still is, she broke up with me. She said I had no direction in life. My older brother left for Africa, for Rhodesia, Africa as a missionary. I thought I'd never see him again. And flunking out of my major, this is during Vietnam and all kinds of things going on. So what am I supposed to do? So those three things kind of collided together. And I think that was the first time, even though I was a Christian, I knew Jesus, I read my Bible, I would carry my Bible to high school, to show everybody I was a Christian. I don't think it did a whole lot, but I carried it. Anyway, I that was the first time I think I actually asked God, "What do you want? What do you want from me? What do you want me to do?" And kind of tricky to graduate when you have two F's for the same class on your. I flunked 4 phys ed classes. I flunked badminton, ping pong, phys ed. I was having too much fun being away from a controlling father. So I had to take summer school classes, phys ed classes, to be able to graduate. And trying to figure out what to do, switched to religion philosophy major, and applied to seminary. And and somewhere in there, my girlfriend Diane, who had dumped me because I had no direction in life, somewhere in there, God convicted her or something. We got back together, and we have just past a couple weeks, we celebrated 53 years of marriage.
Awesome.
So I kind of showed her, I guess I have some direction in life now. And she's a registered nurse. That was part of the problem. Problem in that she actually studied, and in college, I didn't. I don't think I read a book up until seminary, and then God used Diane, my wife, I think, to change my life. And of course, then I was studying the Bible, and I wasn't just doing math problems or physics or whatever, and it just really changed my life in a lot of ways. And that's what I'd say led us into missions and things, because my older brother invited us to come to Rhodesia, now Zimbabwe, and he lived out in a bush station out in a tribal trust lands, it was called then, white minority government, and that was before, well, apartheid was still in South Africa. So back in the 70s, 73, we went to Rhodesia for 6 months, and while we were there, really felt God directing us to go back full time. Every place in Africa needed a nurse, and we applied with a mission board. We're all accepted, raised in support, and then they voted to not send new missionaries there because it was so politically unstable, because of all that was going on, and trying to get missionaries out. So that's kicking and screaming. That's how I ended up at Lancaster Bible College. Didn't want to be there. My dad was on the board. We needed a place to stay. We had 2 daughters, 2 little girls at the time, and couldn't go to Africa, and trying to figure out what to do. And we knew Lancaster Bible College needed a volunteer soccer coach and needed somebody to teach 1 missions class. And they had an apartment open on campus. So we moved on campus. We're the first, I guess, people on campus that had children in an apartment. And I coached soccer for free and taught a missions class, and then worked some other part-time job. But that's how we got at Lancaster Bible College. Ended up being there 31 years.
Wow. That's incredible. To circle back to your brother's story, just out of curiosity, was he there when the Rhodesian Bush War was underway?
Yes,
wow.
That was part of what we were dealing with, trying to drive on dirt roads and avoid landmines, and had to evacuate a couple mission stations and things like that. He had a big old Land Rover, and we learned so much from him about missions and ministry, and but yeah, that's what was going on. A lot of South African Army troops were up. In fact, sort of funny story. We went on a couple hunting trips. My brother did that each year for meat. They lived out on a bush station, took a kerosene freezer on a trailer, pulled by his big Land Rover, took a couple African believer guys from the Bible school, slept in tents out in wild Africa along the Zambezi River. We had to keep fires going to keep the hyenas and wild dogs away from the meat. And and I had a license for a Cape Buffalo. I didn't even know what they were, but I had borrowed a 404 rather large rifle from a European rancher guy, and my brother had a 300 H&H Magnum. So we saw a big bull that came down to the water holes. So the guide and us 2 are going after this Cape Buffalo, shooting at it. I shot it first. And between the 2 of us, we shot at it 17 times. And when it finally went down, there were 6 holes, nice holes all around the shoulders, good hole. My first shot broke its shoulder blades and whatever, it went down. So while we were there, here this truckload of Army guys, South African troops, come down, and they thought there was terrorist activity because there was so much gunfire. So we said, no, we're just hunting the Cape Buffalo.
Yeah, nice.
But anyway, I thought that's an interesting story.
That's awesome. I thought you were going to say they requisitioned the meat for their...
No, we wouldn't.
That's good.
Although they had more guns than we did.
Yeah,
we got chased up trees by rhinos, but and we couldn't shoot them because they're protected. But
right.
They could stomp us into the ground, which seems unfair. But anyway, enough of that. But that's where we thought we would spend the rest of our lives. I kind of wanted to die in Africa and have my heart buried under a baobab tree like David Livingstone. Yeah. But God had other plans.
Yeah.
As he often does.
Yeah, that's true. So you transitioned. So you got the soccer coaching gig.
For free.
And then
didn't mention that.
Yeah, and
I didn't even get a soccer ball.
Times were tough, I'm sure, back then. But then instead of math, now you're teaching missions. So tell us about that.
Yes, at seminary I majored, Master of Divinity, but then I went back for a Master of Theology degree in missions and evangelism. And the plan then was to teach missions at a Bible school in Africa because nobody was doing that then. It was like missions was for the Western world. I thought, well, you Africans, the Great Commission's in their Bible too, So that was the plan. I guess I was a trendsetter, I guess, cutting edge or whatever. But it never happened. So I came to LBC and started teaching a missions class, and eventually applied to be head of the missions department. But part of the issue was why I was only a missionary, for 6 months in Rhodesia. And I've never been accused of being boring. I've been accused of all kinds of other things. So when I when I applied for and got the position of head of the missions department, or chair of the missions department, chair of intercultural studies now, I thought, well, I have my summers free. We could do summer missions trips in the summer, and then I would get missions experience and talk to missionaries. So that's what we did. My wife and her daughters, and my wife always went on the trips, and our daughters took turns going. Sometimes they would moan like, "Really, I have to go with Dad to Italy this summer? Yeah, suck it up. It's going to be tough. Whatever." So as a family, we didn't want to reach the world and lose our children, and so the girls were all required to go on missions trips with Dad. So they've all been a lot of different places. We would go to, we went to Portugal and Italy a bunch of times, and we'd work with regular missionaries there. So then I would always ask the missionaries, what do you want in a short-term team? And ask the local Italians, believers, what do you want in short-term trips? Or we went to Jamaica probably 15 times, took students, and always trying to find out how a short-term trip could do better based on the local people, what they thought. And I was somewhat shocked at what I heard of how some teams came and how they acted. And it's almost like they just wanted to get, well, this was before internet and selfies, but, pictures with some poor people, and then come back and almost brag about what they did. And so anyway, that's what started short-term missions trips. So I've, some years, our missions department at LBC, we would send out 10 different teams. So different places. So I managed that whole program. I usually did 3. So sometimes Jamaica in January, and then sometimes Turkey over spring break, or 2 trips in the summer. And we always had trouble getting guys to go. And I probably got offended. Well, I know I did, because I got told. Offended a lot of guys at LBC, because I wrote an article for the school paper one time called "Where Are the Men?" And while women reach the world for Jesus. So we would take 12 students to Jamaica, where it was English speaking, and you could actually preach in street meetings. And out of those 12, it'd be 2 guys and 10 girls. And, and a couple times we had all girls teams going.
What do you attribute that to? I mean, and your career there spanned decades, and maybe there were shifts in, maybe that changed over time, maybe it stayed the same, but what's your theory on why that is?
Well, mine isn't just a theory, it's actual fact. It's true. No.
Well,
that
sure.
was a joke. That was a joke.
Okay. I mean,
sorry.
Hey, you can claim whatever you want. Here,
that's true.
We'll let the people decide. But
That's true. Well, historically, even from the 1800s, missions has been single women and married couples. Very, 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 very few single men ever serving in missions. So a lot of single women in all kinds of dangerous places, reaching the world for Christ. Well, I would say the men were safely back studying their Greek cards and defending why women shouldn't be pastors or something. And that's kind of what the article said in the paper, which that bothered people. I think women are more spiritually, sensitive maybe. Guys would often say at LBC, well, I have to work because I need a car. I have school bills. And I go, well, yeah, because the girls, they go for free, right?
Right.
Okay,
right.
that was sarcasm.
Yeah.
You got that. Yeah. It's been a mystery. So on our trip to Austria, Vienna, Austria, we worked at a school in Vienna, and we stayed in a youth hostel. And so every morning we'd come down to have breakfast, and I'd see people from all over the world in this youth hostel. And then we rode a train to get to the place where we were working. And I got to thinking, I could do a backpacking trip in Europe and stay in youth hostels and reach the world. And maybe guys would want to do that. So one of the primary reasons I started doing backpacking trips in Europe was to try to get guys to go.
Oh, interesting.
And it kind of worked sometimes, but still, I think the only I did 3 backpacking trips in Europe that were called Band of Brothers, so it was guys only. So we did have more guys than girls on those trips, but I think there's only been one trip where we had like the same number of guys as we had girls, so maybe 6 guys and 6 girls. But it's still like this year, next week, I'll leave for Europe. There's 5 girls and 4 guys,
Okay.
counting me as one of the guys. So 9 of us altogether, just 3 student guys going. But so that's always been the problem.
That's interesting. Yeah. Well, yeah, and I know a couple of my buddies and your friends too, the Daves. They would have gone on some of those Band of
Right,
Brothers trips.
right.
And did you find that was more attractive for guys? You're linking that with the Band of Brothers series, and,
Right.
visiting some of those battlefields and places those guys walked. Do you think that was attractive to them because it's tied to, World War II?
I think part of it was because I knew all those guys too. So a lot of we would go down to my parents' woodland and shoot guns and stuff. So, and that was a big part, I would say, of our ministry at LBC. Is I wasn't a traditional college professor. Relationships with students was important. So I was one of the few faculty members who went to chapel every day. I went to chapel and I sat with the students. I wanted to hear what was being said. Plus, that's when I knew what was going on, who broke up with who and what was happening in chapel. And then I would always eat in the dining hall and I'd sit with the students where the other faculty sat at some faculty table that didn't make sense to me. That would be like going to France as a missionary and not wanting to learn French and not sitting with French people.
Right.
What are you there for? But that's often what got me in trouble because I was more with the students and wasn't academic or scholarly. But I don't see much point in memorizing stuff. I mean, I had a good one to talk. I flunked out of my major twice, but just memorizing stuff for a test. And then it seems like, especially at a Bible college, we're all about changing lives and making a difference. So for example, in a class on discipleship I taught, I'd say, I don't know how to grade this. What good does it do to get an A in discipleship and then never make a disciple? So the way I could grade it is 20 years from now, I'll come and see if you've made any disciples, and then I'll give you your grade. But
Yeah.
that doesn't fit in the academic, package or whatever today. But anyway, I kind of got off the subject there, but.
No, that's so. You were talking. One of the things you said that's interesting is that while not full-time missionary, when you get to go around to these different places, you're talking about different cultures and getting little bite sizes, all around the world, engaging the missionaries, engaging the local populace, and asking these pointed questions of, hey, what would you like to see in a short-term trip? Or like what rubs you the wrong way about some of these short-term trips? How did that information help you to, over time, refine these teams and refine these trips and maybe change your style to serve your audience better? Both those going on the trip and the receiving ministries.
Okay, excellent. It helped me a lot. I changed very, very different than when I first started doing trips. I thought so. The first short-term trip we did was to the Bahamas,
Oh,
to
nice.
Nassau and the Bahamas. We did a vacation Bible school, at a church. And we learned of a missionary that was in Jamaica and would like a team to come. So I probably did 15, 20 short-term trips to Jamaica with the same missionary. We would do street meetings each evening out in different areas of Jamaica. We worked with the same little Jamaican church, handed out tracts, invited people to come, preached a lot, did work teams. And after a whole lot of years and, 15 different trips, that little church didn't grow by anybody. I mean, there weren't any growth in that church, even though we handed out a lot of tracts. Supposedly people got saved, I don't know. And I guess I first thought we're going to make a difference in Kingston, Jamaica. 12 white kids. And we would mix cement by hand. Didn't know what we're doing, whatever. And the more thinking back, thought, man, we could have hired some Jamaican men who were unemployed, who needed money, needed work. They could have mixed a lot more cement, a lot faster than us. And so where I've shifted now, I'd say I think the primary purpose of a short-term trip is to change the lives of those who go. And that's why I like the backpacking trip now and how I've adjusted that. We're going to spend 2 weeks traveling around Europe. We're not going to make a dent in Europe. I've done 32 or 33, I don't know, 89 trips altogether. So a whole lot of trips. I've had diarrhea in 28 countries. And my goal, and maybe I shouldn't say this, but I really want to have diarrhea in at least 30 countries before I go to heaven.
That's a good goal.
I know, thank you. So I got to, get to a new country, drink the water or something, drink the water out of the canal or whatever. But and for some reason, God has, now I deal more with constipation. So it's kind of defeats the point.
Oh, man, you're going to have to really overachieve to get that goal. Yeah.
I know, this is tough. Let's see, I got off the subject there. Why did I say all that? All these trips, there was a reason. Oh, people often ask, so all these trips to Europe, and we have survey cards and we're asking people questions, and it ends with, what do you think is going to happen to people when they die? What do you think is going to happen to you when you die? If there's a way to know, would you want to know? Most Europeans say, nah, I don't want to know. I don't care, apathy. How many people get saved on your trips? I don't have a clue. I don't know. I don't know if anybody has. And I usually tell the students, don't be, that's God's responsibility. Yeah. We're sowing seeds. We're maybe picking rocks out of the soil.
Yeah.
I mean, but these kids that are going, hopefully it changes their life. Yeah. I don't let them take their cell phones. That in itself changes their life.
Yeah.
And so for the first time in their 18 years or 16 years, they've spent 2 weeks without their cell phone. Wow. And then they say, yeah, I don't even miss it. Of course, we're traveling around Europe, how can you miss it when you're in the Alps, or whatever. And for the first time, they actually talk to a real live person. I think, my opinion as an old person, kids, they text. My grandchildren text to each other when they're sitting in the same room. Put the phone down and talk to them. Hi, how are you? What's your name? So their absolute biggest fear on the backpacking trip that they all share is talking to people. That's their biggest fear. So I'm thinking part of the point of this trip, there at least be 9 or 10 kids, I shouldn't say kids, high school students, college students, who will maybe actually have serious conversations with real life people and know that they can do that. And they can talk to them and ask them, wow, this is working, and you don't need to be on your phone. So that was the big shift, I would say, in seeing the primary purpose of short-term trips. I see there is value in work teams, and I understand that because some entitled, apathetic, overfed American teenagers need to go somewhere and work hard and sweat and see poverty and whatever, and hopefully be convicted and not just feel good. Well, I helped a poor person and have a selfie to post on Instagram.
Yeah.
But that it makes a difference in their life, and so that affects in what I do. what we read on, and we always read a book. I have a devotional guide we go through, and the whole point is to help them. First and second great commandment, love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and then hopefully out of that love for God, to love people, to see people as God sees them. So for some of these students from a small rural Christian school somewhere unnamed in Pennsylvania, they will probably see they'll see a lot of things they've never seen in their hometown.
Yeah.
I remember on a train somewhere sitting on a thing, and right across from me were two gay men making out on the in the train, which for most of us students ago, that's a whole different part of world that they've ever have a hard time even comprehending, maybe.
Right.
And what I've seen the last few years in Europe, there's a growing Muslim presence as well, which that for most of the students on these trips, they've never seen a Muslim, they never met a Muslim, or that they know of in their town, and that, or even talk to be able to possibly share the gospel with. So it's one of the other things I always try to do is we always go to a former concentration camp. This year, we're probably going to Mauthausen, which is in Austria. I think it might have been the last camp liberated by the Allies, the 11th Armored Division of the United States Army. I usually cry. I cry a lot there too. But that actually happened.
Yeah.
It's history. So for these students who they don't even remember 9/11, they're so young. It's good to spend 4 hours walking and seeing the crematoriums, and walking down at Mauthausen. There was a quarry, 187 steps coming up out of the quarry, and the prisoners had to carry big blocks of granite up those steps. Every time I go, I walk down to the bottom, and then I slowly walk up those steps, and I'm worn out just carrying my camera bag.
Yeah.
And thinking what it was like, and the thousands, hundreds of thousands who gave their life to liberate, Europe. But I think that's important for American teenagers to see and experience, and to know that it's one of the things that I've noticed more recently. There's little, I guess, brass squares in cobblestone sidewalks all over Europe, and I was reading more about it, that and it has the name of the person who had lived in the home there. That was their home when they got taken by the Nazis, and it has the date they were taken, and then it has the camp they were taken to, and then if they didn't survive, it has the date they died.
Yeah.
And so I already messaged a picture of that to our students on our Instagram group, and said we're going to look for these all over when we're walking, and know what that means. That means there was a real family or person that had lived in that home 80 years ago and got hauled off to some camp and slaughtered.
Yeah.
And the only way, my opinion here, of course I think I'm right, but the only way things like that don't reoccur is that generations learn about it and know about it, or it's just going to happen again.
Yeah.
But anyway, so
Yeah.
I'm blessed.
Yeah. Yeah. I've seen some of those brass cobbles when I was living in Germany for a little bit. But it is, that's a sobering thought. And like we were talking about before we started filming it, it only takes one generation to be completely removed from all that, unless, like you said, you keep it in the forefront of people's minds. Yeah. That's important.
Last year on one of the trips, on the backpacking trip, two young ladies said to me, "So, tell us what it was like at 9/11." And I felt like I was a guide at Gettysburg Battlefield or something, like well, yeah, they weren't born, they didn't know at all. And I said, yeah, I remember I was at Lancaster Bible College and somebody came running in and said a plane just flew into the World Trade Center building, and people gathered and we got it up on the TV and we're watching that. And while we're watching it, we see another plane fly in, and these girls, they're just sitting there like, whoa, like,
Yeah.
and it's kind of surprised me and saddened me that why wouldn't you know that? Well, why wouldn't that kind of be part of history and remembering? But then I realized I am 76 years old, and I
Yeah. Well, that was yeah, I mean, that was probably the most critical moment. And, I'm 39 now. I was in 10th grade when that happened, but it was that everything shifted at that point. The whole world shifted.
Yeah.
And there's been, I mean, to look at it in hindsight, there were a lot of mistakes made in the subsequent years, which I don't want to go into, but it did. It changed the entire way the world does business, and yeah, and I'm sure the ramifications are going to continue into the future. But yeah, it's remarkable to talk to people and then understand, oh, they have no memory of that,
Right.
And every generation has something like that.
Right.
Vietnam would have been a completely pivotal moment in our nation's history, World War II, and so on and so forth, back the line. But when you do and have done these trips over the years, how has your leadership, your personal leadership changed running these trips, but also how have you tried to cultivate leadership in the teams that you take with you?
I, when I first started doing trips, well, often my daughters, when I'd come home, our daughters would say, "So, Dad, how many girls did you make cry on this trip?" And so I'm thinking I'm kinder and gentler now. I don't know. Maybe it's because I'm older. I think I have, especially thinking of the backpacking trip, especially now, I'm just thrilled when they come back and they actually talk to a person.
Yeah.
They talk to a stranger, and I understand, the ultimate hopefully goal is to actually share the gospel, maybe share their testimony with somebody, give them a gospel, a John that we carry, all kinds of stuff. But just that they would get up out of their seat on a train in some foreign, country and go up to a stranger and say, "Excuse me, do you speak English?" And then have a conversation with that person. And I would often tell most of the professors I knew wouldn't do anything like that. It's safer to sit in your office and, read books on evangelism or something, but it's just a whole different thing out there, or in some big square in Belgium or Venice, Italy, or wherever. And okay, get with your survey partner, go talk to people, really. And
Yeah.
to see them do it, I think I become more thrilled. It sounds like I'm lowering expectations, but it's just, I think I'm genuinely thrilled with seeing little steps of this 17, 18-year-old, which when I was that age, I was flunking out of college. So
Yeah.
a whole different thing. And I always have since Diane, my wife, isn't going on trips, so I always have a female leader who she's also in charge of. She has the first aid kit, which
Again.
my wife puts together. So she's in charge of, all the aches and pains and the hurts, which, I don't really want to deal with. I'm not real compassionate. So you're having diarrhea, big whoop. I've had it more times than get over it.
Yeah.
Did and that helps them, I think, learning. And then I'm trying to give responsibility. I always have a butt of the team, which that's a guy in the back, and his job is to just watch everything. Be in the back, watch for pickpockets, watch when we go through security. He's always back, and we divide into different train groups to get on and off the trains. So I always have a guy as a train group leader and have different responsibilities than to lead a discussion while they're in their train group in some car, not just to waste time, but talk about the devotional book or whatever and things like that. And it does seem 3 of the guys that have gone on trips with me have started their own nonprofit ministry, And on Sunday, well, my grandson is one of them. They leave with 12 guys to do a backpacking trip in Europe.
Wow.
Kind of patterned, like they're not making reservations. I guess that's the other thing. The first backpacking trip I did in Europe, I made reservations for every night we were staying at places. That was horrible because then we had to actually get to those places. We had to get on the right train, and that was too structured for me. Now I make very few reservations. I believe there has to be unknowns in our life. There has to be risk to be able to grow in our relationship with God. And we can easily live life here in America and wrongly believe we don't even need God because we can depend on this, we can depend on this. We have our life is all organized and structured. So for a lot of these students, and not having their cell phones, to show up in a city, and I could tell so many stories. In fact, I have told a lot of stories in a book I've written.
Nice, which we have
called Remember.
Right here, yeah.
Remember, Stories of God's Grace. And of showing up in a city, not having a place to sleep. There's always a place to sleep. And I got to realize, like, we often slept in front of the Venice train station. And then some of the students, they'd have their inflatable sleeping mats and sleeping, and we're sleeping next to homeless people that are laying on a pizza box, on the marble, and thought, this isn't right. So then the last number of years, I told, don't bring any sleeping mats, don't bring any sleeping bags or whatever. I'll take care of that. So I bought military surplus sleeping bag mats, and then I cut them in half. They each get a half.
Well,
yeah, you only really need it for your hips and your shoulder.
I was going to say, if you're on your side, you don't need that much.
Yeah, and they were, and then I got cheap military surplus blankets. So then the goal the last few years, then we give them away, give them to somebody along the way. And then the students say, well, what am I going to sleep in if I give mine away? Well, too bad, we'll work it out. But there's always a place to sleep. And then often, depending on weather or whatever, I try to find, go to a hotel, and it's always the same. Like I can remember this one, some town in France, and it's a Saturday night, and there was 20 of us on this trip, and it started raining, so we were going to sleep outside. And so the female leader and I go into town, and here's a hotel on the left, and it looked like it was out of our price range, but I thought I'd go in and see. So I said, do you have any available rooms for tonight? And he says, for 2 people? No, I said, there's more of us. Oh, how many? I go, 20. And he goes, 20 people? 20 people? You don't have reservations? 20 people? I said, well, you can at least check. And I'll check. And he's all upset. And he's going down, checking, and he's checking. And he goes, well, all we have is 10 double rooms. I said, well, 10 times 2, that'd be, see, I was a math major. Yeah. I said, well, that'd be 20 people. He said, yes. So he said the price. I go, oh, and see, this is like 10 o'clock and on a Saturday night. I'm thinking he's not going to get any other people. I said, if you include breakfast for us, we'll take it. And breakfast was normally 15 euros. And he says, okay, it includes breakfast. So God provided. We all got rooms, 20 people on a Saturday night, no reservations. And the breakfast was unbelievable. I still have little tiny souvenir ketchup and mustard bottles written in French.
Nice.
That's on my bookshelf to remind me of the amazing breakfast that God provided. So that I try to tell students that's part of the fun. And so if I'd have made reservations, they would have thanked me. Nice reservation, Sanford. Yeah. But they had nobody. They couldn't thank anybody. They couldn't thank me for that. They had to thank God for that. God provided that. And it is a risk, but that's part of the fun.
Yeah.
It's like, there was a risk with Joshua. Let's march around Jericho and blow trumpets because, we know that'll work. That's historically, that's how walls come down.
Right.
Or whatever. It does seem in God's word, maybe that's why we call them miracles, that God did things that contradict. Yeah, Gideon, your army's too big. Make it smaller. Because if I'd have given you put them in, the Midianites into your hand, your hearts would have come proud. You'd have thought you did it.
Yeah.
And so I really think, anyway, that's why I had to write the book, because it'd have been wrong to not share those things that God did. And that little old me from New Holland, who flunked out of his major twice in college, and his girlfriend dumped him, but then she's married to me for 53 years. See, God does amazing things, and that needs to be passed on
Yeah.
to people, that God can do amazing things. So I'm looking forward to seeing how God's going to provide in this next trip.
That's awesome. So you've kind of already hinted at it, but the ministry that you're taking these backpacking trips is one you started several years ago, and it's Live 1027. Can you just talk about the name, how you got that started, and kind of where you're at with it now?
Sure. Well, after 31 years at Lancaster Bible College, my contract wasn't renewed, which wasn't really my idea, to leave, and trying to figure out what to do. Our oldest daughter said, "Well, Dad, why don't you, start your own ministry and, do what you love to do?" I was doing what I loved to do. And I said, "What do you mean? Like be a missionary? Like then people would have to support us. I mean, how's that going to work?" And she goes, I guess as only daughters can do, "Well, Dad, why don't you trust God like you tell everybody else to do?"
Yeah.
So that's what we did. And I didn't really think, Sandy Good Ministries, that just seemed, I don't know, a little arrogant. I'm too humble for that.
Right.
And trying to figure out what to do. So it was my wife who, Luke 10:27 and 28 is where Jesus said the first and second great commandment, that you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, all your mind, and all your strength. And the second is like unto it, love your neighbor as yourself. And so that's where Live 1027 Ministries come from. It's really Luke 10:27, and we want to live that out. So that's the big focus, I guess, on our trips, or what we do, is to help students, help people grow in their love for God. And out of that love for God should ooze out of people a love for people. So if I would tell students, one of the classes I taught at LBC was spiritual life and evangelism, and I would tell students, if you don't give a rip about the lost, if you don't care, then I guarantee you don't really love God. And then I get chewed out and scolded and whatever. "I do love God. How can you say that?" Well, God's all about reaching the lost. I mean, that's why he sent Jesus. That's why he commanded to make disciples of all nations as you go. That's what he's always been about, that all the nations of the world might know that he is God.
Yeah.
And over again. So don't tell me you really love God and then don't care about the lost. So those go together, and try to help on the trips to help students grow in their love for God, and then to see people, to sit in a square and watch people for an hour, and just ask God to break your heart for people, and just observe and see people, and see that many are lost. And often students come back after trying to use the survey cards that talk to people, like when the last question, what do you think happens to people when you die? What do you think is going to happen to you when you die? And if you could know, would you want to know? Very, very few say they want to know. And so students come back and say, "I can't believe how apathetic. They just don't care." And then it is, I guess, it is neat to see an American Christian student who spent their life in a Christian school, and maybe for the first time in those 17 years, weep over a lost person, and realize the lostness of mankind, and the hopelessness of life without Christ. And so that's been wonderful. That's starting this ministry, and it just how it worked out, with how I left the college and our age, not needing to get medical help, whatever. Anyway,
Yeah.
fit, and our children were all grown and married, and so it was just the two of us, and getting support and wonderful people, sacrificially giving, to keep our ministry going. I mean, there were a number of years, often it seemed where I didn't get a paycheck because there just wasn't money in the account, and to get plane tickets, to make a reservation for 15 plane tickets, then we had to have a deposit of $100 a plane ticket. Well, we didn't have $1,500 to be able to put a deposit in. Where, the last few years, there's actually been, I have gotten paychecks, and it's been wonderful how God's provided from just out of the blue. I should say out of the blue, of money being contributed to the ministry. That's been a real blessing. I speak in a lot of Christian school chapels, and drive to Delaware and New Jersey and Pennsylvania, all over in different schools, and people say, well, the schools must pay you something. No, they don't pay anything. Most of the schools are just barely surviving. Little Christian. They're not going to pay me to drive to Greenwood, Delaware, and speak in their school chapel for 20 minutes. Which is also interesting. 2.5 hour drive, 20 minutes in chapel, and 2.5 hour drive back. But that's where part of it is to communicate in a way. Because I'm not a typical chapel communicator.
Yeah.
And so just the fact that in schools, when I say, especially middle schools, when I say I've had diarrhea in 28 countries, I've often gotten the standing ovation from all the boys. And then they come up and say, whoa. And the next week when I'm there, oh, here's Mr. Diarrhea, whatever. So that's just, it is true. But that's, I guess, a hook. Jesus told a lot of stories, and I tell a lot of stories, and from 80-some trips and I have a lot of stories of God doing things all over the world. And so that I think helps that students in chapel aren't bored. And part of it is I try to recruit for the backpacking trip, but beyond that, it's to communicate a love for God and change their life. So often the schools have a theme, and I ask what the theme is for the year and or a topic, and try to speak on that. And then I might have a postcard or something, say, if you're interested in hearing more about our backpacking trip, let me know, and I'll get you the information.
Yeah. Wow, that's awesome. Let's go over kind of the few things that are coming up, and then I want to circle back with a few closing questions. But you have a trip coming up.
I do.
Next week.
Yes, Monday. Monday at 2:00, the team arrives at our house, and then we have board members, after a couple hours, hauling us up to a local retreat, Paradise Lake Retreat outside of Denver. There's a cabin there which I had done prayer retreats at when I was at Lancaster Bible College, and we're there for Monday night and Tuesday night, and then we go to Philadelphia International Airport Wednesday to fly into Zurich, Switzerland Wednesday night, arriving Thursday morning in Zurich. And we're there till August 5th. We fly home from Milan, Italy. So there's 9 of us on this trip. 2 girls that went last year, which is always kind of nice to have some veterans. They know about getting on and off trains. We have Eurail passes. So when we get on trains, we don't have reservations, so we don't have an assigned seat. So it's just getting on, finding an empty seat. And they don't check you at the door. You just get on.
Yeah.
And then sit, and eventually a conductor will come through and show our rail passes. So that's part of the fun. That's why we divide into 2 different groups to get it. So we're all on the train, and then they should know when we're getting off.
Yeah.
And sometimes we just, because it kind of doesn't matter, sometimes, which is part of the fun, I ask a student, say, pick a number between 1 and 10, and they pick 8. So I say, okay, we're going to go to platform 8. And then I ask another student, okay, number 3. Okay, the 3rd train that comes in at platform 8, we're going to get on that train.
Wow.
And then somebody else, I say, pick another number, they pick 4. Okay, the 4th stop on that train, we'll get off. And then they always say, well, what's there? I don't know.
Yeah.
But there has to be something, or the train wouldn't stop there.
Yeah.
And that, to me, is part of the beauty and part of the risk and the unknowns. And I could tell so many stories of how God seemed to work out that was the exact place he wanted us to be
Yeah.
by what happened on one of the trips. We were looking on the board, the female leader and I, to try to figure out, well, where will we go? And there's actually there's a city in Switzerland called Frick.
Okay.
And I said, hey, what the frick? We could go to Frick. So we all got on the train and we went to Frick. Do you want to know what's there?
Sure.
Not much. not much. But we had a nice meal in Frick
Yeah, nice.
and bought some postcards.
That's awesome.
But there's people there.
Yeah.
And I doubt if not many tourists go to Frick.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's partly why I love it. So yeah, that's coming up soon.
Yeah.
And my
awesome.
pack's already packed.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
And there's 3 guys on this trip. They've all sort of volunteered to carry some of my stuff.
Oh,
So,
nice.
yeah, at 76, I'm okay with that now. My humility's coming out. I don't have to compete with them. I let them carry my stuff, and I have a lighter pack, and I'm okay with that.
Yeah, that is nice.
Yeah,
That's very nice.
and people think I'm an idiot. Yeah, yeah, they don't know.
And then you have coming up in the fall another place that people, if they're not able to go on a backpacking trip, they can engage in a fundraiser you have coming up.
Yes, October the 2nd. It's a Thursday, 6:30 to 8:30 at Calvary Church in Lancaster. We have a dessert that's free, and a big part of it is there'll be students from this backpacking trip sharing how God used the trip in their life. And I usually try to have a speaker, somebody from a Christian school where I speak, and I share some things. Part of the point is to hopefully help the people that have invested in this ministry over the year to see some of the fruit of what they've invested in to
Yeah.
real live people. And also we have a board with like needs with numbers on, and people can take a tag, to give a gift. Last year, one of the tags was $265,000 for a new Ferrari.
Oh, nice.
For me, for our ministry car.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
figuring that would be a good stewardship of time. I could get to Christian schools a lot quicker.
Yeah.
Down Route 1 into Delaware, and things like that. I didn't get a Ferrari, but somebody did send me a really nice book on Ferraris.
Oh, there you go.
And said, I apologize, I couldn't give you the money but here's a book, you can look at their picture.
Well, there you go.
So that was
Yeah.
worth it. So I'm not sure. Not sure what we'll put up there this year, but kind of a surprise gift. And my wife isn't thrilled about the book on Ferraris, but
Yeah.
it's kind of nice. Anyway.
That's great. Yeah. Another way people can engage is we have this book here that you graciously gifted to me, but remember, Stories of God's
So
Grace.
wait a minute, you never paid me for that?
Well, yeah, that's true. I mean,
Wow.
we can make a deal after the filming, but where can people buy the book?
That's a good question. I've heard that it's on Amazon, although I don't know.
Okay.
But they can contact me, and then
Okay.
I can send them a copy. It's $20 for the book.
Okay.
And if they include $5, that covers the shipping. I think the shipping's $4.85 to send a book. But
Okay.
and I'll
we'll put a link on there in the description.
and for like an extra maybe $550, I'll autograph it. I'll sign my name.
That's a swinging deal.
Yeah. No, I'm just kidding. It doesn't matter. I would love to have anybody get it. It's all, I mean, I guess I did write it, but it's stories. I'm just telling stories of what I've seen God do.
Yeah.
Out of that I wrote down in my journals, and then I have some testimony from students of how God used the trips to affect them. So it's a lot of, I would say, neat stories of God providing in ways that I certainly didn't deserve, and him still showing himself strong and mighty.
That's awesome. 2 questions I wanted to ask. One would be, you mentioned you're 76 years old and
Yes.
you're out doing these, not to beat a dead horse, but you're out doing these trips. A lot of trips that, frankly, people a quarter your age wouldn't feel comfortable with, or a lot of folks wouldn't feel comfortable with, between unstructured, uncomfortable, all that. I think that's inspirational in the sense that, I believe that we're not done working for the Lord until we punch our last ticket, right? And so, what encouragement can you give to folks in your age demographic to continue? And maybe, obviously it's not going to be exactly what you're doing. Maybe it is. But what encouragement can you give to just stay engaged and stay working for the kingdom?
Well, yeah, I feel amazingly blessed. I have 11 stents in various arteries as well. I had a heart attack, I don't know, I should know, 15 years ago. And last week I had my yearly checkup with my cardiologist, and in her words, perfect. Blood work and everything. And at my age I can still do it. I mean, I cut and deliver firewood and try to stay active and healthy, but yeah, I love it. I don't see anything in the Bible about retirement. I think, well, in a lot of the countries of the world, I think it's a Western, I don't know what, that somehow at a certain age we get to stop working and sit in a retirement community or play shuffleboard till Jesus comes back. Yeah. I don't see that anywhere in God's word. And so when the Sunday school class we attend at church, there's about 120 people my age, whatever. And whenever I get to teach, I try to encourage them that they have worth and value. They have stories. They've lived things. Young people need to hear from them, and to not just sit and not feel like they have nothing to offer. Discipling somebody or taking some younger person with them. That's partly why I love it. That's partly why I deliver firewood. I always have. Well, partly because then the younger person can load the wood. But I always have either a grandson or grandchild or a student that's going on a trip with me helping me with wood. It's not just to give me help with the wood. Part of that's intentional. And then we talk about things and we share life. And they're not just learning how to split wood with an axe, but they're hopefully learning to work hard. But they're learning something from this old guy. And I tell them stories and I think that's part of it. That seems biblical, how God intended it to work. So and for young people, if there's young people listening, go find some older person and just say, tell me what it was like. Tell me about your life, what it was like. We tell students that I was born in 1949, usually they go, do you remember the war? Well, if you mean World War II, no, that was done in 45. My dad was in that, so he came home. Oh, did he come home? Yes, because that's how I was born. I do remember Korea. I remember Vietnam. I remember a whole bunch of wars. But anyway, the first backpacking trip I did in Europe, we had to exchange money in every European country. We had to get Belgium francs, and then we had to get Swiss francs, and then we had to get off the train and go through passport control every country. Now, everybody has the euro except Switzerland. And you just ride. You don't even know you're going through another country. Yeah. It's just so simple in some ways, but back in the old days, and there weren't even phones. I remember trying to find a payphone somewhere to be able to call back to the college to let them know that we got there safely. It was 3 days later. Yeah. There wasn't an internet. There wasn't all kinds of things. And when I tell students that, really? Like there wasn't. Yeah. But so there's value and worth to our age and sharing that, I say, to other people.
Yeah.
Or it just gets forgotten and lost.
Yeah. No, that's huge. That is huge. Final question. If you were, you've lived a life of, many experiences, lots of ministry, education, higher education, all this. If you're going to pass on a word to somebody, maybe it's someone in Europe that you meet on the street, maybe it's a dear family member, last thing you get to tell that person, what's that message? What's the one thing you want to, it's the one thing that you can tell somebody and it's going to stick. What is that message?
I've had diarrhea in 28 countries.
Nice. Yeah. Put it on the tombstone.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Sorry. That was that isn't what I would really really tell him. And if my wife's watching this, I apologize. Boy, what do I tell him? Life, boy, never. I don't know. Never give up. Quote Winston Churchill. Never give up. It's never give up. Yeah, heart attack, a bunch of stents. Well, went to cardiac rehab. I failed cardiac rehab 3 times because I kept having more chest. Anyway, that's not funny. Yeah, I have a lot of cardiac rehab T-shirts. But for some reason, God has kept me alive. That God is trustworthy. You can trust him. I guess that would be it. You can trust God. You can trust him. And that's, I don't have a verse to prove this, but I think God, I often hear him whispering, trust me. Trust me. I'm the creator of the world. I'm the freaking creator of the world. I got this. You can trust me. And we can. There's so many voices out there, this, whatever, that we can trust God. And to watch him provide. Yeah. To watch him provide. He loves to come through at the last. Somebody told me God's timing is never late, but it's seldom early. And I think that's exactly right. At the Jordan River, the priests, the water didn't part to the soles of the first priests, those first guys in line. They're the guys that had courage. I want to meet them in heaven. The water didn't part till the soles of their foot touched the water. Then it parted. I mean, and then, if you're 8,000 back in line and you already had 7,900 go across on dry ground, big whoop. But that's what God wants. People of faith who will trust him when it's unknown and there isn't a visible provision, but you're going to trust him anyway. And that's what my book's about, of amazing things that God still did in my lifetime in Europe, which isn't any less amazing than the walls of Jericho coming down, or the river, or the waters parting, or Daniel in a den of lions and not getting eaten, or turning water into wine for a wedding, or Lazarus coming forth. Those miracles of God. God still is God and can do amazing things and wants his children to trust him.
Yeah, amen. Amen to that. Well, Sandy, thanks so much for sitting down and sharing part of your story. And yeah, hopefully we'll do it again soon.
Good. And thank you, Aaron. And you'll be getting an invoice in the mail for my expenses. And yeah, if you could make it in cash and in a brown unmarked envelope, that'd be great.
Nice. Yeah. Well, I'll talk to our accountant. Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
No, don't talk to the accountant.
Thanks, Sandy.
No, thank you.